In this video, at long last, after around 10 years of waiting, finally the S trains have their full power unlocked. Took him 10 years, like that is a long time. Although with that said, not as long as the 1995 trains on the Northern Line, which came out in 1998, and their full power didn't get unlocked until 2014. That's 16 years. That is like a long time of running a train slow to eventually unlock their power. At least on the S trains, 10 years, relatively quickly by comparison. Now there's a number of factors for this. On the S trains, originally I kept the acceleration and power of these trains slow so I didn't catch up the A, C and D trains on the route, which was pretty understandable. Then when they got rid of the A, C and D trains, I was waiting and waiting and waiting for when will the full power be unlocked on the S train. And it took them a bloody long time. It took them 10 years. Now, there are several reasons for this. One, they had to upgrade all of the substations on the route, because these routes were originally 660 volts and were designed for trains running around 2 miles an hour per second of the old trains, with the new S trains running up at 2.9 miles an hour a second, and with air conditioning, that took a lot more power. So, big voltage upgrade. Had to upgrade the voltage from 660 volts to 750 volts, with a lot more current and wattage being used, so full power upgrade on the line. Then, as well as that, for some reason, TfL doesn't seem to trust their train drivers with 2.9 miles an hour per second of acceleration. I don't quite get that, because the unlocked power and acceleration on their trains always goes hand in hand with the automation system. So, the service lines had to have CellTrack installed. Now this new CellTrack is an upgraded version compared to the version on the Northern and Jubilee and DLR lines. On these routes, the CellTrack is a bit more simplistic. It works on a reference point and tacho based system. It's exactly the same as how a Schindler M series and a Cone EcoDisc lift works. Ramses has the tacho, so it counts how far the train's moved or how far the wheels have turned, and then that gets synced up with reference points at set intervals due to real world tolerances. If you just literally want to discount how far wheels moved, you don't necessarily know a train's gone exactly that distance, because there is real world factors at play, and there could be things like wheel slip and that. So a reference point within a set tolerance keeps the tacho in sync with how far the train's actually gone, and that's how you run an automation system. On the new CellTrack, they've tried to make it a lot more high tech with different forms of reference point, lots of wireless systems and stuff going on, all technical and stuff, and to be honest, it doesn't work as well. Because on the Jubilee and Northern lines, I really like the CellTrack. It's direct to the point and in some ways quite simple. Like if the train's set to go at 40 miles an hour, you'll hear it power cycling. It will turn the power to motors on off every 3 seconds just to keep it exactly at that 40 miles an hour, which is how I like it. New automation systems, they do all this stuff like a comedy driving and have all these extra algorithms that do stuff, but it just doesn't make us nicer experience. Plus the levelling is just not good. When the train deaccelerates to the station, it slows right down, and for the last little bit it goes like half a mile an hour for like 5 seconds before it stops. Like, oh, that's painful. Hopefully they'll improve that. Anyway, let's now get on to the video. And here is the S trains at full power and full acceleration. At this point in time where the video is filmed, this only happens between Victoria and Temple stations on the Circle and District line. And when the S trains run at full power, they sound much better than they used to. They sound like a 2009 train. Let's take a look.
Yellow line, Boston Path.
So then, let's compare the S train to the 2009 train, considering they've both got the same VF drive. And, according to their visual specs, they both should accelerate at the same acceleration. Because the 2009 train does feel like it accelerates faster, even with the upgraded acceleration on the S train. Let's take a look at the 2009 train. So So it takes 16 seconds to leave the platform, a distance of 133 meters, which gives an average acceleration of 2.3 miles an hour a second. Now that isn't the peak acceleration, the number which I'm wanting, because when the train starts off, because it's got some acceleration jerks moving as it speeds off, then as it gets up to high speeds, the acceleration will tail off. So that 2.3 miles an hour a second is an overall average, it's not peak most acceleration. And I calculate that to be 2.7 miles an hour a second. And with these calculations, it also calculates that once the train has done one train length as it leaves the platform, the train has reached 37 miles an hour. Like, that's going a good speed just for leaving the platform. Now let's compare this to the S train. And surprisingly, despite the S train feeling slower, this is entirely just a visual thing, because it's a bigger train with bigger stations. It makes it feel slower just because the scenery won't be going past as quick as on the 2009 train, where it proper feels quick. But that's just how it looks. In practice, it's actually running at exactly the same acceleration. The train length on the 7-car S train is 117.5 meters. It took it 15 seconds to leave the platform, giving it an average acceleration of exactly the same, 2.3 miles an hour a second, which gives it the same peak acceleration, 2.7 miles an hour a second. That's interesting. The S train and 2009 train now both run at the exact same acceleration. And just for comparison, here's the S train accelerating at its former old slow acceleration. Doesn't sound as good at this slow acceleration. So, on the original acceleration, it takes 17.5 seconds for a train to clear a train's length. That is a 2.5 second difference, and that 2.5 seconds makes a big change in acceleration. This is because the calculation of acceleration to speed and speed to distance are direct linear calculations, when a combined calculation of acceleration to distance is an exponential calculation, meaning small changes in the number of seconds it takes is from big changes in acceleration. And the original average acceleration is 1.7 miles an hour a second, a 0.6 miles an hour a second difference to the unlocked average acceleration, and that leads to an original peak acceleration of 2.1 miles an hour a second, which is a 0.6 mile an hour a second difference from the unlocked peak acceleration of 2.7 miles an hour a second. And that also means that on the original acceleration, once the train's cleared train length, it's going 30 miles an hour, when on the unlocked acceleration, when the train's cleared a train's length, is going 35 miles an hour. So, big differences on the unlocked acceleration.
네, 나중에 가서